Hi everyone and happy solstice! I do hope that I have managed to upload this video on the actual solstice. I'm pre-recording a few videos before I leave Edinburgh for the Christmas break because I'm not going to bring my camera home with me and I'm not sure that I'm actually going to get a chance to shoot any videos while I'm in Ireland. So I wanted to just pre-record a few things that I can upload for you while I'm gone. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to just chat briefly about the winter solstice this year, because I know that I'm unlikely to be able to record anything on the actual day, and I'm definitely not going to be able to edit together a winter solstice vlog this year. I think my vlogs have kind of gone by the byway at this point anyway. In a way, it was sort of a project that really lasted a year or two and then kind of naturally declined. But yeah, I just wanted to make this in lieu of that, with my sort of usual solstice thoughts, I suppose. So this year, for the first time, and I've been talking about this for quite some years, I'm actually going to make it to Newgrange for the winter solstice. I've talked about Newgrange before in other winter solstice vlogs, and if I can find the one I'm thinking of in particular, I'll link it below. And if you don't know what Newgrange is, just give it a quick Google and you'll find everything you need to know. Now, of course, I'm not going to be going inside Newgrange itself for the solstice because that is incredibly difficult to do. It's organised by lucky draw pretty much, but we are going to be going along to stand outside for the moment of the sunrise. Now, I haven't completely decided. Quite a lot of people actually do gather in front of Newgrange to welcome the winter sun. I'd imagine that a lot of them are pagans. Some of them aren't. It's just a kind of a hodgepodge of people who are interested in Newgrange and who want to kind of mark the moment and partake in something sort of cultural. I may or may not actually stand with the people outside, directly outside Newgrange, because we're considering finding a vantage point from across the valley. Essentially, Newgrange is on a hill. It's a very lowlands kind of area that has a lot of very small hills. And so there's kind of a bit of a small valley between the hill on which Newgrange is sitting on and, like, you know, a hill directly opposite and other hills surrounding. And my dad has this theory that back when Newgrange was first in operation, and it was actually being used for a very long time, I believe it was being used for at least 1,000 years. He believes that what would have happened would be the congregation, the population of the area would have actually stood on the opposite hill to watch the sunrise reflecting off the front of Newgrange. Now, this is complete conjecture. There's no evidence for this, obviously, but it just makes sense. It makes sense to me, it makes sense to him. Because there were quite a lot of pieces of white quartz found. The facade of Newgrange had fallen into ruin over time, and sometime I think in the 19th century it was reconstructed by pure guesswork, and the pieces of white quartz were sort of arranged in a not particularly aesthetically pleasing manner outside on the front of the newly constructed facade. But my dad assumed that yes, these stones would have played some part in the facade. Maybe they were arranged in some sort of design or symbol, and from the way that Newgrange is facing, because the rising sun hits the face of it at the moment when the sun rises on the winter solstice and shines in up the passage tomb, if there was some symbol or even just having the white quartz arranged on the facade, that would have lit up the moment that the sun actually hit the facade, and that would have been visible from across the valley. So it makes sense that because the people outside the tomb weren't going to be experiencing that moment of the sunlight actually lighting up the tomb, it makes sense that they would have had some sort of spectacle from outside. So we're essentially considering trying to recreate that, recreate if that is in fact what used to happen. But we're considering finding a spot across the valley to wait for the sun to rise, because we figure that we'll actually see more from there, because we'll actually see the moment, if it happens, when the sun actually hits Newgrange itself. Whereas when you're actually standing there, it's more like, it's less obvious, I think, when that moment actually occurs. So that's enough rambling about that, I think. In terms of ritual, it's going to be a weird one for me this year, because I've actually taken pretty much all of my altar items from my parents' house in Dublin over to Edinburgh because up until last year I had a sort of mini altar over there still. I had quite a lot of items. I could construct a sort of altar there, but at this point I've actually brought pretty much everything over here. So it's going to be a very minimalistic ritual, but that may not be a bad thing, because I've been really kind of enjoying a very stripped back practice right now. And I find that when I'm at points of shifting and changing in my spiritual practice, the best thing to do is to go minimal. And because otherwise I start to kind of question the meaningfulness of the various elements that I have on an elaborate altar and so on, and I question the efficacy and the meaningfulness of various gestures and ritual structures. So it's actually going to be quite nice to have something very simple. Last year I decorated the tree on the winter solstice. That's something that I often do. I have a small fake tree that I decorate, and I'm going to be doing that probably around the time of ritual. And then probably just lighting a few candles. I'm going to bring maybe a very small amount of things, like a set of prayer beads and maybe a stone or two over there. And then I'm probably just going to sit and kind of meditate and do some path working, that kind of thing, really without any pomp and show at all. So that'll be a bit different. So probably just play some Christmas carols, and just sit in the moment. I'm quite looking forward to that, actually. It'll be something akin to what I did last year, but I think even more stripped back. So, speaking of stripped back, I thought I'd also take this chance to talk a little bit about my practice as it currently stands. And that's kind of why you're looking at my bedroom altar right now. My main altar at the moment, I do have another big, fancy, elaborate altar in the living room, and it consists of a shrine to what used to be a shrine to the Morrigan, and now I'm seeing it more as a shrine to the concept or the archetype of the gatekeeper, more generally. And so that's there. But I've been feeling kind of ever since I constructed that shrine, I've been feeling less and less inclined to show it on camera. And there's a very limited amount of the altar, because there's the shrine in the middle, and then around the sides there are various other bits and pieces that I might use in ritual, or that I just like to have there for decoration. And there's very little for me to actually show on camera. So I won't actually be really showing that altar much for the moment on camera, but I thought I'd show you this one. And besides, I haven't actually been using that elaborate altar that much in recent times. I use that altar for Sabbath rituals, and I use it occasionally. I've been trying to get into a routine of sitting at that altar every Monday, creating sacred space and doing some sort of meditation or path working or something of that nature. But it's been very, very stripped back, and that's kind of my next point here, is that stripping my practice back has definitely been something that I have needed to do recently, because I feel like it's undergoing a lot of change. I'm definitely entering maybe a new phase of my spiritual practice, and I'm starting to maybe let go of some of the older things that I used to incorporate, and actually bringing back in some other things as well. I basically rewrote the entire kind of prayer section of my creation of sacred space. I've gotten to a point now where I don't really have ritual actions to create sacred space. It's really just a series of prayers and a kind of lighting the candles accordingly, the candle that corresponds with that part of the prayer, if you know what I mean, which is something that I've always done, but that really is the central kind of core of the ritual now for me. It's become quite simple, and I recently rewrote all of the kind of prayer or words of power that I use when kind of getting into sacred space, getting into that. It's almost like getting into a sacred mindset for me these days, rather than actually constructing sacred space in any sort of ceremonial manner. So I rewrote all of that because I felt like I needed some new poetry, I needed some new words, and I've been enjoying that. But most of my practice is now in here in the bedroom altar, because I haven't been using my shrine for daily practice. I used to have a daily practice of dedication to the Morrigan every evening at that altar, but that has kind of fallen by the wayside because I'm in the process of figuring out what my relationship is to personified deity and how that's going to move forward. But something I have managed to reintegrate into my daily life is a morning meditation, which I'm really pleased about, and that I've been doing at this altar, which you're looking at right now. So this is quite stripped back too. I do draw a card, but I don't place a whole lot of meaning or emphasis on the card that I draw. It's kind of just for visual purposes, and I often will just cycle through a whole bunch of different cards that I draw and just pick whatever one I kind of actually just want to be up there for the day, and I feel like that's perfectly okay. I'm not attempting to do any form of divination with this. It's just, I just want to have something there that looks nice for me on the morning. I do use the stones that you see in the front there. One of them is probably new to you, the purple amethyst that I bought in London when we were on holidays in London, and I'm really pleased with that purchase because I didn't actually have a big piece of polished amethyst before, and I'm really liking that. So even though, again, working with stones isn't something that I've been hugely into recently, I do kind of pick up each stone one by one. I've kind of associated them with the elements. I used to use the rough blue calcite in the far left hand corner at the back. I used to use that to represent air, but I wanted something polished, and I've ended up using the amethyst now to represent air. So the smoky quartz on the right represents earth for me. The pink rose quartz, it represents water. The carnelian on the left represents fire. The amethyst represents air, and then the fluorite in the middle there, that represents spirit to me. And I kind of do a rough sort of breathing exercise and sort of vaguely integrate it with the chakras, associating like one or two chakras with each element. I have a kind of a rough little thing like that I do, but more than anything that's just to get me centered and focused, rather than, I don't think too much about what that's actually doing or why I'm doing it, or it's not a big focus of the morning meditation. It's just something that gets me grounded and gets me there, gets me focused. And I like to, even just the sensation of having the stones in my hand is quite grounding and quite centering and quite comforting. And then I just meditate. I've been doing 15-minute meditations, which is a little shorter than I would like to in future, and then I have in the past. And once upon a time I had a meditation practice of 20 mornings in the morning and in the evening, and that has gone definitely by the wayside, but 15 minutes is more than I've been doing in a year. I was only managing 10 minutes and then 5, so giving myself 15 minutes to do this in the morning feels really good, and for the first time the last couple of weeks I've actually been managing to find that meditative space, because I hadn't actually been really getting into a meditative state at all when I was trying to do this in the mornings. Until recently. I'd kind of lost my ability to meditate almost, and I realised when I started to suffer again from anxiety and depression, even a little bit. Anxiety, I struggle more with anxiety than I do with depression. Depression is just kind of like it hovers underneath the anxiety, if you know what I mean, when the anxiety gets bad. And when that started cropping up for me again recently, I realised that I had been developing all these practices for a reason beyond just spiritual ones. And this is, now I'm not going to get into this right now, but I've been thinking a lot, and I did make a video about this recently, about the relationship between kind of self-help or self-development and spirituality, and the motivation behind your spiritual practice. But I'll get into that again in another video, because I do mean to make more videos on that. But yeah, I mean, even if I'm seeing my spiritual practice as a solely kind of quote-unquote spiritual thing, like focused on the spiritual outcomes, I still can't do that. I can't feel reverence. I can't connect to the divine if I'm in a state of anxiety and unhappiness. It just doesn't work. So even if meditation doesn't overtly create or cause or bring about moments of divine connection or spiritual experience or ecstasy, at the very least I want my practice to be helping me to stay afloat, to be helping me stay centered and happy and content and focused and creative and moving forward in the right direction, because it's kind of it all comes together as one big project, really, I think. But that, like I say, that's something that I'll get into again. So I think that's all I want to say in this video. I'm about to rush into college now to finish up some work that I need to get done before I go back to Ireland in a few days. And I suppose you're watching this in the future. So this time next week when you are, well, in less than a week's time when you're watching this, I will probably have already been to Newgrange, and I'll be doing, I'm not exactly sure what, on the day of the solstice itself. I'll probably try to do some celebratory things, go for cake, you know, that kind of thing. Hang out with my parents or whoever else is about. Some of my friends are back to Ireland for Christmas for the first time in a while, so it'll be exciting to see them. Yeah, so I hope you're all having a really lovely solstice, whether you're celebrating the winter or the summer solstice, depending on what hemisphere you live in. I hope you're having a really nice day. I hope you had a wonderful ritual, or that you have a wonderful ritual tonight, whenever you are doing ritual, if you're doing ritual. And I hope that you enjoy your Christmas if you're celebrating that, if you're doing anything for that. And I will be back with another pre-recorded video, hopefully in about a week's time. That's the rough plan anyway. So take care, guys. I hope you're all really well, and I hope that you're having a really blessed holiday, seasonal time, Yule time, Yuletide, a lovely Yuletide.